Yep. It's another day, another Happy Fuck ICE Agents Day. Yep. Oh, yeah, here we go. ICE agents, officials just try to abuse and assert their power. I mean, I heard they go around to the local and state police and sheriffs around Minneapolis and around Minnesota, tell them to stand down and stand by. Just telling, hey, go ride the bench. We'll call you if we need you in the playing field of court. It's like the old saying is, they go around saying, I'm ICE, boys. We got full power. We can do what you want. Crazy.
All right, to the other big story we're following this morning that broke late yesterday, an internal Immigration and Customs Enforcement memo obtained by the Associated Press shows ICE officials told officers and agents they can forcibly enter homes of people subject to deportation without warrants signed by judges. Now, the memo from acting ICE Director Todd Lyons, shared by whistleblowers with Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal, is dated May 12th. It authorizes agents to forcibly enter homes using only an administrative warrant instead of a warrant from a judge when a person has a final order of removal. This reflects, of course, a major departure from the long-standing practice of requiring judge-signed warrants to enter homes. It also is a clear Fourth Amendment violation. The memo also instructs agents to knock and announce, state their identity and purpose, give occupants time to comply, avoid entries before 6 a.m. or after 10 p.m., and to only use, quote, necessary and reasonable force. The whistleblowers say it was secretively rolled out, shown only to select officials, and verbally briefed to others. According to the group, Whistleblower Aid, quote, together our clients are aware of multiple DHS employees who faced retaliation for expressing their concerns and or disagreement with the May 12th memo's policy change, likely constituting prohibited personnel practices. One client is aware of a seasoned government instructor tasked with teaching this new doctrine who chose to resign rather than be forced to teach what they understood to be unlawful. In response, a DHS spokesperson defended the policy, didn't deny it, defended it, saying individuals with administrative warrants have had, quote, full due process, and that administrative warrants have long been recognized as immigration enforcement. Joining us now, MS Now senior legal reporter and former litigator Lisa Rubin, MS Now justice and intelligence reporter Ken Delanian, along with MS Now contributor Mike Barnacle. Ken, I'll start with you. So first of all, I'm just wondering what MAGA Republicans think of the concept of law enforcement being able to break into people's homes without an actual judge-issued warrant. But more importantly, it now seems to explain what we're seeing out there, because there's a lot of behavior out there that does not vibe with law enforcement procedure. We've seen homes being broken into. We've seen cars being broken into. Yep. We've seen videos of ICE agents inside stores. And I think a lot of people interested in the law being followed are wondering, how did they get in there? Why do they feel emboldened to break in? What do you make of this memo? And is it a violation of the law?
Yeah, Nika, good morning. This is incredible and important reporting by the AP's Rebecca Santana. And she says in the story that the AP doesn't really know, no one knows to what extent they've actually used this memo and acted on this memo, but they documented at least one case where they said they saw ICE officers break into the home of a Liberian immigrant and drag him out, and then they later learned that that was based only on an administrative warrant. And you ask what MAGA Republicans are going to think of this. Look, let's be real here. MAGA Republicans and many Donald Trump supporters are angry and annoyed that there are so many people running around the United States who have final orders of removal, illegal immigrants immigrants in the country illegally who should be deported, and ICE is trying to find them, and they can't find them, and it's a really difficult administrative problem, and it's existed for years. But that doesn't trump the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. No matter whether they have an order of removal and administrative warrant, the Fourth Amendment applies to all persons in the United States, not just American citizens. And there's a long litany of Supreme Court decisions and other case law that suggests that the Fourth Amendment applies in all of these contexts. There's no such thing as an administrative warrant that allows law enforcement officers to break into a home without approval of a judge, because people are supposed to be secure in their persons and papers. That's a fundamental precept of the Constitution. This thing we don't think has been tested in court, and most legal experts who have looked at this have said that it won't survive a court challenge. But right now they're acting on it. As you said, we're seeing ICE agents do these things, and we don't know what the legal basis is, but this memo suggests that this is one of the things. And the other really telling thing about the story, you alluded to this, is that she reports that the memo is not in wide circulation. In fact, the security around it is really telling. They're not letting people keep copies of it. They're letting people read it, and then they're taking it back. And somehow these whistleblowers managed to obtain a copy and slip it to a senator, and that's how it's gotten out. But this is really an alarming and troubling development, and I'm glad you're highlighting it this morning.
So, Lisa, you've seen the whistleblower complaint. Let's lay out a little bit from a legal point of view the important difference between a warrant issued by a judge and this administrative warrant. There's a reason that there are restrictions on searches of people's homes built into the Constitution. But what is the distinction between those two kind of warrants?
An administrative warrant is exactly what it sounds like. It's issued by somebody within the agency. It doesn't have a judicial check on it. A judicial warrant is something that is presented to a judge with grounds for the warrant and is signed by a judge. And that has always been sort of the dividing line between when you can search somebody's home and when you can't. Now, Willie, there are exceptions, even under the Fourth Amendment. For example, if you're in hot pursuit of a suspect, can you enter a home without a warrant? Sometimes, yes. If you need to prevent imminent violence to someone, for example, you hear a domestic violence episode or a likely killing behind a door, can you enter without a warrant? Sure. But this doesn't reach any of those exceptions in the case law under the Fourth Amendment to when you can enter a home without that judicial warrant.
So what kind of an umbrella are they using? Are the ICE personnel potentially using to go into a person's home? Under what umbrella?
I don't know. I mean, essentially what they're saying is if this is incident to an arrest of someone who is subject to a final order of removal, that a search predicated on an administrative warrant alone is enough to get through the door. We have not seen the entirety of the memo. We don't know whether it has an underlying constitutional justification, but theoretically, according to this whistleblower disclosure, people at ICE have advised that this meets their constitutional standards. As Ken just said, I'm a little dubious of that.
So apparently ICE has no responsibility from the administrative level at the top of ICE to publish this memo so the public can look at it?
They don't. And in fact, there are, for example, a couple of weeks ago, my colleague Fallon Gallagher and I were looking at ICE policy and CBP, Customs and Border Patrol policy, on the use of force. We were surprised that that memo existed in a public format, and only because it was an exhibit in litigation that's existing right now about the use of force against protesters and other citizens. Were it not for that, would we find it on ICE's website? Absolutely not. They have no obligation to publish it, and oftentimes take great pains to keep these things from the public. But what Ken described goes well beyond that. It's not just keeping it from the public, it's preventing people within the agency from even maintaining a copy of their own. That suggests a level of secrecy around this that goes well beyond simply having internal policies for internal consumption only.
And because of this now, these raids certainly be open to legal challenge. We'll see if that comes going forward. We'll keep an eye on it.
Newly disclosed whistleblower complaint that shows ICE was authorized to forcibly enter people's homes without a judicial warrant. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez joins me in studio now to discuss this. Camilo, good morning.
Good morning.
Talk to us about this memo. It seems key, and what exactly the memo says.
Errol, this memo represents a marked and major change in U.S. immigration policy. Historically, ICE agents have been instructed to to refrain from going into private property, people's homes, unless they have a judicial warrant signed by a judge. That is because the Constitution has long been interpreted to mean that federal, state, and local officials cannot enter private property without that judicial warrant. But with this memo signed in May of 2025, but just disclosed yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security is essentially arguing that the agents on the ground can bypass that constitutional protection if it involves people who have deportation orders. In other words, immigrants who have been ordered deported by an immigration judge or an immigration court. The memo authorizes agents in those situations to enter private property by force to arrest and detain and process for deportation people who have final deportation orders. Again, without a judicial warrant, only having an administrative immigration warrant signed by the agency, not by a judge. This will likely trigger significant legal challenges because, again, the Constitution has been interpreted to mean that you cannot conduct a search without a warrant.
So this tells us how this administration is interpreting the Constitution to allow these ICE agents to conduct this operation. But how are members of Congress reacting, considering they may have a different interpretation of the Constitution?
Well, Democratic lawmakers are saying that this policy is blatantly illegal, that it violates and tramples on the U.S. Constitution and against that protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. But they're also now calling on Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, an acting ICE director, the person who actually signed this memo, to testify in front of Congress, to be pressed and grilled about these changes and their legality. I should underscore that the Department of Homeland Security is standing behind the legality of this directive, telling us in a statement that it only affects people who they believe have received full due process and who have been ordered deported from the country.
A key memo I'm sure we'll hear much more about in the days ahead. Camilla, thank you.
To find out questionable legal
Well,
justifications.
now ICE is going
and while
down,
Minneapolis,
going
yes, has
into
been
Maine
the
as
epicenter,
well.
the administration tonight is surging ICE agents into a new target, Maine. The administration is calling it Operation Catch of the Day. Yes, just like catch and release, these dehumanizing fishing analogies continue. One city councilor in Portland, Maine, is calling it something else.
I want to be really clear. This is a war of terror that's being waged on our city by the federal government. We've seen people of all ages getting thrown on the ground and getting thrown into trucks.
Maine's governor says the federal government is only sowing intimidation and fear. And if that sounds familiar, well, it should, because what's happening in Minneapolis could be a preview of what happens in Maine. We've already seen the videos showing aggressive ICE tactics, and tonight we're learning about a new one. ICE officers are using sweeping new power to enter homes without a warrant from a judge. The Associated Press has obtained an internal ICE memo that says that agents can enter a residence with only an administrative warrant if they're trying to arrest someone with a final order of removal. I can tell you right now, that's headed straight to a legal collision with the Fourth Amendment, because that treats the home as a protected space. I mean, literally, the word house is in the text. It says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation. Now, one of the few exceptions could be hot pursuit. Think textbook, that's a person commits a crime. They're seen running into their house for cover. The cops are chasing them, and they run into the house to get them, requiring some sort of what they call exigency. It's not only used in a civil context like an administrative warrant, but here's the thing. That's the textbook classroom discussion. In the real world, it's already happening, apparently. Look at this video from Minneapolis earlier this month. You can see federal agents ramming through someone's door. The rifles are drawn. And the AP says the home belonged to a Liberian man. And agents forced their way in with only an administrative warrant. So if this memo is accurate, it's likely to further spike tensions between federal agents and anti-ICE protesters, especially when they have suggested that being near the target could sweep you into their dragnet as well. Would that now mean everyone in the house would not have the same Fourth Amendment protection? This is from Minneapolis Today. A witness says officers deployed some kind of green chemical agent. You can see them dragging someone across the snow. Here's another video from that same altercation, showing Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino throwing a canister into the crowd.
Whether you're a professional welder.
Canister into the crowd.
Gas on Bill! Gas on Bill! We're filming you! Gas on Bill, Bovino! Gas on Bill!
The administration did notch a temporary legal win today. A federal appeals court froze a judge's order that limited how federal officers could act around peaceful protesters. All of it's going to make for a very tense backdrop tomorrow when Vice President J.D. Vance shows up to Minneapolis. We're told he plans to defend how ICE agents are carrying out their operations. But one person Vance has not been defending, Renee Good. It's been 2 weeks since she was shot and killed by ICE. 2 weeks since Vance stood in the White House briefing room and blamed Good for, what was his phrase? A tragedy of her own making. By tragedy, did he mean her own death? In just a moment, Good's attorney will join me. But first, I want to bring in the former acting director of ICE during the Obama administration, John Sandweg. He's also an attorney. And John, I want to first level set here if we can. Is this a departure from typical ICE procedures when you're trying to detain someone who may have that final order of removal?
Yeah, Laura, this is a significant departure, really a true reversal from what longstanding position is at DHS and ICE. Traditionally the position was that you cannot forcibly enter a home without a judicially authorized warrant. So that's your warrant, Laura, as you well know, where you have the officers to fill out an affidavit detailing every element that led to them having probable cause that the individual, let's say in this case, if it's an immigration case, would be the undocumented immigrant is present, that their immigration status, that they've been ordered removed. The administrative warrant is just a form, Laura. It's really just a form the officer fills out and maybe another officer signs it, but it's nothing more than a couple of boxes. So the idea, though, that ICE has now suddenly reversed and said we can forcibly enter a home with just those administrative warrants really is pretty surprising and shocking to me, given the longstanding history and the training and everything else that was very, very clear that you do not, you cannot forcibly enter with just that piece of paper, that form.
And no Supreme Court case saying that that is different now. I mean, the Fourth Amendment still holds, even for people who are maybe non-citizens in this country. But the Associated Press, John, memo has been, quote, shown only to select DHS officials who then shared it with some employees who were told to read it and return it. Now, what does that signal to you?
It signals to me real concerns about the legal basis of your memo. Laura, I talked to a couple of former lawyers who were in the general counsel's office during the beginning of this administration. They had heard rumors of something like this was going on, but it was being limited to the political class, right? That only the new Trump appointees were working on this memo. All of that is very weird, and obviously all of that is very suspicious. But Laura, let me just highlight something very quickly. The immigration advocacy groups are out there, and it's getting well known in these communities that are being targeted, that ICE could not enter the home with just that administrative warrant. And so, look, I think the administration is looking at this and they're having an increasing problem. It takes a long time to go get those warrants. You have to, as you know, the officers have to submit the affidavit, stand before that federal judge, swear to it, and then they can get the warrant. That doesn't lend itself well to a mass deportation campaign. But look, anytime you're drafting legal memos in secret and you're sharing them in secret and you're telling people they can't copy them and you're hiding them from Congress and the public, you should be concerned about the underlying legal basis of that memo.
A very good point. When I was out there, people were actually handing out little rights cards to people, telling them what officers could and could not do in the Constitution because they were trying to maybe get ahead of what was to come. Meantime, a judge paused a ruling that restricted federal agents from arresting or tear gassing peaceful protesters. And then moments later, the Border Patrol Chief, Greg Bovino, deployed a gas canister after warnings you heard him give during clashes with protesters. Now, DHS says the protesters were following Bovino and other agents at gas stations. They were trying their vehicles, even throwing food at them. What do you make of that scene?
Laura, if you had any desire to de-escalate the situation, for better or worse, Greg Bavino has become very much a face of these campaigns. We've seen him in Chicago, we've seen him in Los Angeles. He's become pretty well known as a result of this. He knows that. If he had any desire to de-escalate the situation and lower the temperature in Minneapolis, and again, I've said this a million times, during the Obama administration, there was a lot of criticism about immigration enforcement, but record numbers of criminal aliens were removed without images like this, without these scenes that we're seeing play out everywhere, without this confrontation with the public at large. And so my point is, you can say we can do this in a way that lowers the temperature without, being on the side of criminal aliens, as some in the administration have said, or being in favor of open borders. But for Bavino to consistently go out to the scene of these protests, he knows his presence is going to inflame things. He knows that. Why does he keep going? There's no operational reason for him to arrive on the scene there. And it's just an unfortunate, it just feels often to me like the administration wants to kind of inflame these tensions and create more of these scenes rather than lower the temperature and let ICE do its job and get legitimate bad people off the street, but do it quietly and professionally.
I'll tell you, he does stand out. He doesn't wear a mask among a lot of masked agents. You wonder what the point of...
Official autopsy report obtained by KTSM indicates that the second death at Camp East, Montana has been ruled a homicide. Last week, we reported on ICE officials saying that on January 3rd, 55-year-old Geraldo Lunos Campos, who ICE says was convicted of multiple crimes, was pronounced dead after experiencing medical distress, and his cause of death was under investigation. Adding, quote, Geraldo Lunos Campos, a criminal illegal alien and convicted child sex predator, attempted to take his own life while he was detained at the Camp East, Montana detention facility. The security staff immediately intervened to save his life, end quote. El Paso County Judge Ricardo Samaniego joining KTSM Live at 6:30 on Wednesday, saying local oversight is needed at Camp East, Montana, as well as at a second ICE detention facility that's reportedly in the works out in Far East El Paso. Take a listen.
To be completely, upfront, I mean, we have our challenges at our own jail, and things happen, and we're trying our best to, to make sure that things don't continue to happen. But there's two things. One, they don't have that same compassion. If three deaths to them might not be as important to us. It's very important. Anybody even gets hurt. So our concern is that, are they going to worry about the next death? Are they going to try to figure things out to make sure that it doesn't happen?
Federal immigration officers have reportedly been told they can forcibly enter people's homes without a judicial warrant. That's according to a federal memo obtained by the Associated Press.
This was signed and sent out by acting ICE Director Todd Lyons back in May of 2025. The memo is focused on administrative warrants, which are commonly used to arrest those suspected of breaking immigration law. In it, Lyons tells agents that they may use force to get inside somebody's home as long as they have an administrative warrant and a final order of removal.
Now, local governments and advocates have urged people to not open their doors to agents unless they are shown a judicial warrant signed by a judge. The matter of judicial versus administrative warrants has been in the spotlight since ICE arrived here in the Twin Cities.
10 days ago, agents were seen breaking down the door of a man from Liberia living in Minneapolis. He was detained and then released and then detained again.
A judge ordered he be released again after ruling the agents violated his Fourth Amendment rights by entering his home without the warrant signed by a judge or judicial warrant. Well, a whistleblower tells the AP that the May 12th memo has not been widely shared within the agency.
The memo has reportedly been used to train new ICE officers, though. All right, this comes as new video obtained by Fox 9 shows armed agents stacked outside a home in Shakopee, apparently there for somebody who is living inside.
Fox 9's Karen Scullen joins us from the newsroom to take us through what it shows in that footage tonight. Karen?
A 45-year-old man from Laos who was in the country illegally and had an order for removal dated from 2002 was arrested outside his home. But his wife says agents never produced a warrant despite them asking for it.
Police with a warrant, open the door!
Ring video records and a neighbor watches and records as federal agents shout to open the door.
Police with a warrant, open the door!
What do you have a warrant for?
Don't worry about it. Mind your business.
Police with a warrant, open the door!
agents yell they have a warrant, but the homeowner tells Fox 9 they never showed them that warrant. After about 30 seconds, those federal agents use a battering ram on the front door.
Let's go! Open the door right now!
Please, you guys are scaring my kids.
Bring your kids out with you.
Okay.
Call your kids now.
I will, please.
Inside are children ages 7 and 12 and an older child who was briefly detained.
My son is a citizen. We have paperwork.
The man agents wanted is Pakde Kangsavat. His wife says he is here illegally, but he's been in the U.S. since he was 4 years old. Court documents show his criminal history to include 2 counts of motor vehicle theft, 2 counts of DWI, and receiving stolen property, with the most recent charge in 2006. It appears Kangsavat is currently being held in El Paso, Texas. Kangsavat's wife says her husband checks in every year with immigration like he's supposed to do, and he did so just in November. Again, he does have an order for removal from 2002, but because he's been told just to check in every year, he's been doing that and has been working at the same time to get a pardon plus become a citizen. Now, I did reach out to ICE to see if they had a warrant and if they in fact showed it to the homeowners. I'm told they're working on a response, but we have not yet heard back. In the
makes the case that it had to send a surge of immigration officers into Minnesota because the state won't cooperate.
But when Homeland Security highlights the arrests of people they call the worst of the worst, a number of those arrests actually happened because of state cooperation. Fox 9's Corin Hoggard is at the Capitol tonight. And Corin, you've been trying to get to the bottom of all of this. What did you find out?
Well, Kelsey and Randy, the state prison system here in Minnesota does cooperate with ICE detainers. County jails may be another story because each of their boards sets their own rules, and some of them have decided not to take just an ICE detainer. They require an extra step, which is judicial review, but that is not in the purview of Governor Tim Walz or Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, who are the frequent targets of complaints from the Department of Homeland Security saying they do not cooperate.
We've never had a cooperative arrangement with law enforcement here.
In interviews and press releases, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem frequently blames Operation Metro Surge on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey refusing to cooperate with ICE.
It's untrue.
You see her face?
We cooperate.
Noem and Surge leaders have blamed Minnesota for releasing nearly 470 deportable criminals onto the streets since President Trump took office a year ago. Corrections Commissioner Paul Schnell says they only released 84 inmates with ICE detainers in 2025.
Every single case coordinated with ICE. Every single case.
DHS also claims another 1,360 deportable criminals are in Minnesota custody. Prison records show about 200 in state custody, plus less than 100 in county jails. But federal agents sometimes seem confused about custody status, like when Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino highlighted a 20-year-old federal agents recently arrested.
This individual was walking the streets of Minneapolis with impunity just yesterday.
Bovino said police would not cooperate, but the man was arrested in Cottonwood County, and when someone came to post his bail last week, the sheriff says his office immediately notified ICE. Agents said they wouldn't be able to pick him up, so the sheriff's office gave them the man's address, and they arrested him later.
Trying to arrest a child sex offender. That's who you guys are protecting.
ICE agents complained about observers honking before they broke down the door to a St. Paul home without showing a warrant and detained a 56-year-old American citizen wearing very little clothing. They put out a wanted poster the next day for 2 suspects they believed were in the house. A quick search of public records showed one of the men has been in prison going on 2 years now. Schnell says the state will release him to ICE when he finishes his sentence. And he's seeing a lot of inmates the Department of Corrections handed over listed on the ICE worst of the worst arrests press releases. People like Tsi Tao, who also came up in Bovino's press conference Tuesday, more than a week after a simple handoff.
When he was finished his prison time, he was released to ICE.
Schnell says the state does not release these inmates before they complete their prison sentences here in Minnesota because they want to make sure justice is served in the United States, but they will always cooperate on release. Live at the Capitol, Corin Hoggard, Fox 9.
questioning ICE's tactics in Minnesota and ordering the Department of Homeland Security to release people detained as part of the ongoing immigration enforcement operation.
Fox 9 investigator Paul Bloom tells us why the federal courts are being flooded with emergency legal filings.
It is called a habeas corpus petition, and in the context of immigration enforcement, it is filed by those arrested, asking an independent federal judge to release them from custody or order a bond hearing in immigration court. Immigration attorneys are now rushing to file these petitions before people are shipped out of Minnesota.
Has he been deported before?
At the Wilson Law Group in South Minneapolis, the staff is swamped with desperate phone calls.
Did he have any contact with ICE prior to being detained this last time?
The team of immigration attorneys here say they have filed 45 habeas petitions for detained clients in the last 5 days.
People disappear off the street, and then it can be 3 or 4 days before anyone hears from them, and they are halfway on the other side of the country. So there's a lot of anxiety.
In just the first few weeks of the new year, 297 alien detainees filed for some form of relief in U.S. District Court, according to federal court records reviewed by the Fox 9 investigators. Compare that number to 260 in all of 2025, when we had ongoing immigration enforcement efforts throughout the year.
How fast are people being moved while in detention? If they get picked up today, there's a chance that they could be gone by dinner time. They don't even make it into the Fort Snelling building. If they're there, they're only there for an hour. Then they're immediately on a plane to El Paso or somewhere else.
After agents broke down the door of Garrison Gibson last week, they quickly shipped him off to Texas. A federal judge granted his habeas petition and ordered his immediate release. The Liberian-born Gibson had already been under immigration supervision with regular check-ins when he was detained at home without a warrant.
Yeah, they just around and they terrorizing people. You're taking people, like tearing families apart.
You see that? Remember that when they
causing fear for no reason.
Federal Judge John Thunheim also ordered the immediate release of a Venezuelan family after armed agents forced their way into this St. Paul home, again without a warrant. According to friends and court filings, they too had to be returned from detention facilities in Texas after filing habeas petitions.
The rule of law only matters as much as ICE is willing to listen to it.
Our operations are lawful, they're targeted, and they're focused on individuals who pose a serious threat to this community.
Top administration officials continue to defend the surge of enforcement activity in Minnesota. And the White House had previously suggested suspending constitutionally protected habeas rights, which hasn't been done since World War II.
The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So that's an option we're actively looking at.
But in immigration law offices, attorneys argue there's a much simpler solution to slowing this flood of habeas filings in federal court.
Well, we really would hope that at some point they would slow down just a little bit, maybe to read the files, ask some questions, and realize maybe they have the wrong person today, and let that person go. Not traumatize them, put them in a plane, shackle them. I think that we just need to require a little more of our government in deciding who gets detained, who doesn't, and that they take the time to actually read, not just herd cattle into a plane and ship them, then start asking questions. That's not the way we should do things.
And guys, immigration attorney David Wilson there went on to tell me that in more than 90% of habeas court filings, detained immigrants are winning favorable rulings, meaning they're immediately released, like those immigrants you saw in my story there, or at least guaranteed a bond hearing over an immigration court. Of course, that would mean they could be free to argue the legalities of their immigration case, but at least not be kept behind bars for months or longer, potentially.
That sounds like a high percentage, is it?
A winning percentage of 90%, yeah, you can't go wrong. And that's across the country. But obviously in our backyard right now, there are immense number of cases. In my story there, I had 297. I just checked.
Already
before I
this year?
came in. Yep, already this year. Now we're up over 310. Dozens each day. I try to keep up just to see what the allegations are. And it's just a stunning number that are hitting this court system right now.
And it's telling the story, certainly.
It is, yeah.
Detained after an armed raid in St. Paul last week is still in Texas. Within the last 72 hours, a federal judge ordered their release after the feds missed a deadline to come up with a warrant.
And they now have less than a day to free all 6 people, including a 12-year-old boy. Our Mike Manzoni started following the story actually last week. And Mike, there's still a lot of questions about the warrant that appeared on the doorstep, right? Walk us through it.
Yeah, court spokesman could not verify its authenticity. And when you compare it to an actual warrant, there are more than a few differences. The warrant mentions they're looking for drugs, guns, and ammo, among other things. It does not say anything about immigration, though the family is now split across 2 detention centers in Texas. When armed federal agents raided this St. Paul home on Thursday, they claimed to have a warrant, but a family friend told us on Friday that no one actually saw it.
She asked for the warrant. They said they had one, but they never showed it to her.
But the next day, this warrant showed up on the doorstep. It's from a state court, not a federal one, and a court spokesman could not verify it, saying that if it is real, it is not on file with the court yet. The spokesman sent us a real warrant for comparison, and there are some key differences between the two. The warrant that showed up outside has no case number on it or file stamp, whereas the real one does. And though it includes the address, it does not have a name or date of birth for the person named. The actual warrant has both of those things. It also does not have a portion explaining what led agents to search the home. The real warrant that the court gave us as an example does include that information. And the judge who signed that warrant that showed up on the doorstep is in fact a real judge in Ramsey County, but the court cannot confirm whether she in fact signed it. A spokesman also said law enforcement officers have 10 days after a search to file the warrant with the court. We are still within that 10-day window. We also reached out to Homeland Security officials for comment, but haven't heard back. In the newsroom tonight, Mike Manzoni.
This is bullcrap news for people out there. This gets more power per eye. Check it out.
Appeals court that sides with the federal government amid its ongoing immigration crackdown in Minnesota.
This is a reversal of a temporary ban preventing ICE from retaliating against protesters and observers. Our So Young Kim joining us now with the latest on the decision on this pending case. And So Young, this stems from a lawsuit that the ACLU had filed against DHS at the end of last year.
That's right. Then on Friday, a district court judge had ruled federal officers cannot detain or tear gas peaceful protesters. Now an appellate court has lifted that restriction for now. This video circulated by the Associated Press shows a chaotic scene between federal agents and a crowd in Minneapolis Wednesday afternoon. DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin sent Fox 9 this statement regarding the incident that reads, quote, "Today, Border Patrol agents who were in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area as part of a targeted enforcement operation were repeatedly harassed and blocked by hostile crowds while simply trying to take bathroom breaks. At each gas station where the agents stopped to use the restroom, groups of agitators appeared, yelled at them, stalked them, and even tried to prevent law enforcement vehicles from leaving, creating unsafe conditions.
Wow.
At one stop, individuals in the crowd threw food at the agents. At their final gas station stop, someone spit on an agent. When an agent moved to detain the person who spit on him, the crowd tackled and attacked the agents while surrounding them. To safely clear the area, agents had to use crowd control measures to disperse the hostile crowd. This latest clash comes just hours after an appeals court ruled in favor of federal immigration officers. The decision stems from a December lawsuit ACLU of Minnesota filed on behalf of 6 protesters against federal officials. Then on Friday, a U.S. District Court judge agreed and issued a temporary injunction prohibiting federal officers from detaining or using tear gas against peaceful protesters and observers related to Operation Metro Surge. Now, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit lifted that order that had restricted use of force. And we had asked federal officials what the green substance seen in the video was, but have not received a clear answer to whether it was a chemical irritant. Live in studio tonight, So Young Kim.
Unreal. God, I feel bad for the people nowadays. So this just gets full ice power. Oh, baby, this just gets better and better every clip of news. Now we got Vice President JD Vance coming to Minnesota to show support for ICE. Oh my God.
We'll be once again on Minnesota today as Vice President JD Vance is preparing to visit our state.
He's expected to arrive later today. Our Bill Keller live at MSP Airport this morning with a little bit more of what we know about this trip right now. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning. In fact, the White House is calling the Vice President's visit to Minnesota an opportunity to highlight the administration's commitment to, quote, restoring law and order in Minneapolis. Vance expected to meet with some local leaders along with community members where he will deliver remarks, including speaking out against the attacks on ICE agents while at the same time celebrating the work they have done to enforce immigration laws. His visit comes one day after another clash between federal agents and protesters in Minneapolis. Video circulating by the Associated Press shows a chaotic scene yesterday where agents could be seen deploying some green gas. Now, Homeland Security says that Border Patrol agents were trying to use the bathrooms at a gas station, but, quote, agitators kept showing up. They were yelling at them, throwing food, and trying to block them from leaving. DHS says someone spit on an agent who then moved to detain that person, and that's when the crowd allegedly tackled and attacked the agents. Officials say they used crowd control measures to, quote, disperse the hostile crowd. This latest clash comes just hours after an appeals judge ruled in favor of a federal immigration officers by reversing a temporary ban that had actually prevented those ICE agents from retaliating against protesters and observers. Now, the decision stems from an ACLU lawsuit. It was filed on behalf of 6 protesters. On Friday, they got a bit of a win. The U.S. District Court judge issuing a temporary injunction that prohibited those federal officers from detaining or using tear gas against peaceful protesters and observers. But yesterday, a federal appeals court lifted that order that restricted that use of force. Now, as for the vice president's visit, while in Minneapolis, Vance will also meet with ICE agents to reinforce what the White House calls, quote, unwavering support for federal immigration officials. Back to you.
Yeah, going to be a busy day, something that will follow as the vice president comes here. Thank you, Bill.
Also something to watch here, DHS now has less than 24 hours to release a family detained during an armed raid in St. Paul last week.
The 6-person family here, originally from Venezuela, including a 12-year-old boy, are currently at an ICE facility in Texas. So a federal judge ordered their release after the feds missed a deadline to come up with a warrant. ICE did show a warrant before detaining the family, but a court spokesman could not verify its authenticity. It has no case number, file stamp, name, or birth date of the person named. We reached out to Homeland Security officials for comments on this, but we have not heard back as of this morning.
An often repeated criticism of our state by the federal government is that it's a sanctuary state for undocumented immigrants, and that depends on how it's defined. So bills to officially give Minnesota that designation and change certain state laws failed to pass in the state legislature 3 years ago. But last fall, the U.S. Department of Justice listed Minnesota as one of 12 states they consider sanctuary jurisdictions. Among the criteria are the separation ordinances in both Minneapolis and St. Paul.
And we've also heard from the Trump administration that it had to send a surge of immigration officers into Minnesota because the state won't cooperate. But Fox 9 investigators discover significant cooperation, including on many of the arrests Homeland Security highlights as, quote, the worst of the worst. When a non-citizen goes into a prison in Minnesota, the state tells ICE. And when ICE issues a detainer for a prisoner who's going to be released, the state then hands them over to ICE. Now, this happened 84 times last year, and Commissioner Paul Schnell tells us they cooperated with ICE every single time.
We cooperate with immigration detainers, which is absolutely contrary to what DHS is saying.
Right now, Homeland Security is claiming Minnesota has 1,360 deportable criminals in custody that it won't hand over. Now, they don't explain how they come up with that number, but Commissioner Schnell says they have about 200 in prison, and county jails have fewer than
are in the country illegally, Alfredo El Horna and Julio Sosa Solis will stand trial on charges of assaulting an officer, a federal judge decided today. But the details of the alleged assault, the resulting shot fired by the ICE officer, and what led up to the altercation are all called into question. An FBI agent testified that ICE began chasing El Horna while he delivered DoorDash, thinking he was someone else. A 20-minute high-speed chase through the city ended at 24th Avenue North, where an ICE officer and El Horna began struggling on the ground. The officer allegedly fired his gun while El Horna hit him with a broom and his friend Sosa Solis hit him with a shovel. That's the ICE officer's version of the story.
You had two different versions.
Defense attorney Frederick Getz says the evidence suggests the ICE officer fired at the men as they ran away into the house. Sosa Solis was hit in the leg.
Version 2, which I think is consistent with the broader evidence, is that the victims of the shooting were about 10 feet away, going away from the officer at the time he fired his gun. Under that scenario, this was clearly an unjustified and unreasonable use of force. But again, the facts are in dispute.
The FBI agent testified that the ICE officer has a gash on his hand consistent with a defense wound. The two defendants admit they held the broom and the shovel at one point, but deny hitting the officer with them. Getz says surveillance video supports their stories.
You would think that if the ICE agent is getting hit with a broom repeatedly, getting hit with a shovel repeatedly, and you're able to see the altercations, you would be able to see that conduct. My understanding of the video, it does not show that.
This is a good one right here. Should we question everything that ICE says? It's going to be a 20-minute clip, so I'll let it roll.
Welcome to Breaking the News Plus on this Wednesday night. There is so much information out there about what is happening in our communities right now that tonight we wanted to take a pause, take a step back, and talk a little bit about a man that you're seeing at the center of a lot of these ICE and Border Patrol operations. Commander Gregory Bavino. He's on the scene here. He was on the scene in Chicago and other cities. And we want to give you just a little bit of context of what we know about what has happened in actions in those cities. And no better to do it with me tonight than Kelly Dietz, one of our investigators here at KARE 11. Kelly, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, as always.
So, let's talk a little bit about what we know about Greg Bavino. He is the face of these operations. He has been the face since the surge here. I was at the shooting of Renee Good moments after Greg Bavino was there. We see him in videos almost every day, and yesterday he had a pretty lengthy press conference in the Twin Cities, and we'll get to the content of that in a little bit. But let's go back to last summer in the surge in Chicago by ICE and Border Patrol. Bavino was front and center there. So the things that happened in Chicago, there were some lawsuits about tactics, and things came out of that we should talk about.
Yeah. So our team has been digging into some of these records over actions by law enforcement and ICE operations in Chicago as a part of that operation there. What we found in October of 2025, there was a lawsuit filed by a group of journalists, the Chicago Headline Club. They're a society for journalists. And their lawsuit primarily had allegations of some violations of First Amendment rights against players like Noam Bovino, the U.S. Justice Department at large, DHS, federal officers and agents, federal agencies. And the lawsuit was an accusation of some violations of First Amendment rights, violations of the Administration Procedures Act, conspiracy to violate constitutional rights, excessive force, things of that nature that had allegedly occurred during these operations. The judge in this case was Judge Sarah Ellis, and what we found from some of those court documents were some, frankly, pretty revealing and damning evidence against DHS and Bovino when the judge wrote in an opinion and order that she felt that Bovino was outright lying in his testimony.
So lying in when you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, she found that he was lying.
The word was lying. And I actually have pulled some of the direct quotes because I feel it would be better for it to come out of the lawsuit directly and what the judge wrote from her. So speaking to the testimony and credibility of testimony from the defendants in this case, quote 1, inconsistencies and incredible representations on the record. Quote 2, a review of them shows the opposite. This is actually, the defendants had entered in some footage, which they thought would absolve them and show that they had acted in an exemplary way.
The defendants being these agents,
correct,
and the people who guide them, like Noam and Bovino.
Absolutely. The judge writes, a review of them, the footage, shows the opposite, supporting plaintiffs' claims and undermining all defendants' claims that their actions towards protesters, the press, religious practitioners have been, as Bovino stated, more than exemplary. So she's saying that this is the antithesis of what they are saying that they've done in an exemplary way.
I want to stop you there just to remind folks. So I watched the press conference with Bovino yesterday, again, head of Border Patrol. He's known as the Border Czar by the Trump administration. And he said in that press conference yesterday, when asked about the tactics being used here in Minnesota, that they were moral, exemplary, same kind of language, he said, of the tactics we've seen here.
Builders don't see roadblocks. They see prototypes.
Some build with bricks. I build with bytes. Builders don't believe in talk. We believe in action.
Builders turn concepts into companies.
Because I build digital experiences that make a real impact. I build because technology should make life easier for everyone.
Because I build digital experiences that our customers will never forget.
Strap in for season 2. Fan favorite characters make their way to the roster. Season Pass 2 is here. 6 months, 6 characters, a new fighter each month. Legends Unleashed. Available now.
Here.
Yes. And this is language that he commonly uses, that they are law-abiding, they are exemplary. A few more examples that I just think are really important here, because the judge calls out Bovino specifically and by name. Turning to Bovino, the court specifically finds his testimony not credible. Bovino appeared evasive, outright lying. When shown a video of agents hitting Reverend Black with pepper balls, Bovino denied it, seeing a projectile hit Reverend Black on the head. In another video shown to Bovino, he obviously tackles Scott Blackburn, one of the plaintiffs, but instead of admitting to the use of force, Bovino denied it, instead saying that force was used against him.
So video shows him tackling a reverend. And
he's watching it, and it's a different reality. Pepper balls are hitting someone in the face. Bovino is watching it. When asked the question, is this happening? He denies seeing that the bullet is even hitting this person in the head. And so, in all, the judge writes, overall, after reviewing this evidence, the court finds that defendants' widespread misrepresentations call into question everything that the defendants say that they are doing in characterization of what is happening in the streets of Chicagoland. So she is calling into question, because of the inconsistencies that she has seen in testimony, she's calling into question every single thing, if what they're saying is true.
So everything that they were saying, and this pertains to Chicago, what they were telling the public was happening, or what they were saying on social media, or wherever they're saying it, she's calling into question the veracity of all of those statements.
Everything, based on the inconsistencies and abnormalities that she has already seen.
You are an investigator for us. You are in courtrooms all the time. You read legal documents. Does that legal document, with the findings from that judge, were there any repercussions to Bovino, DHS, Border Patrol for what that judge found?
I do know that they were told to act law-abidingly. I don't know the totality of the ins and outs. Okay. There's still kind of developments in this case. I do know that one of her injunctions was unprecedented in she wanted to have a sit-down review day over day with Bovino and his team of what actions that they were doing. I know that that was unprecedented by the judge, but this is an extremely strong opinion. This is, you don't, quite frankly, every single day see as strong and direct examples, which I just thought was why it was so important. And we're seeing, this is Chicago, obviously, but they're the same players. And I think if you bring it back to the press conference yesterday with one of our local police chiefs, it was a similar difference in reality.
Right.
And I could talk a little bit more about that, too.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Park police chief came forward with dozens of law enforcement leaders in Minnesota yesterday. And what I thought was notable, one of the things that the group said, several officers, chiefs and or sheriffs said, is like, hey, we want the quote-unquote worst of the worst off our streets, too. We are here for public safety. We swore an oath to public safety. However, we do have to talk about the other things that are happening. And the Brooklyn Park police chief very clearly talks about one of his officers, off-duty. She is boxed in by ICE. Take the story from there.
She's boxed in by ICE. She's asked to show her papers. She doesn't have papers because she's a U.S. citizen. She then takes out her phone to try recording the instance, and the phone is swiped out of her hand. This is all according to the police chief. The phone is swiped out of her hand. Allegedly, the ICE officers or agents' guns were drawn. And so she was then forced to identify herself as a Brooklyn Park police officer, which is not necessarily some place that you want to be in having to prove yourself. But ICE agents then, went away. But it just begs the question of, well, an officer gets to say, hey, I'm an officer. Not everyone gets to say, hey, I'm an officer.
And I think that came across, the police chief and others talked yesterday about, they used the term racial profiling.
Yes.
That this off-duty officer was racially profiled.
Correct.
And other officers, she was not the only one, but this is the example that's kind of floating around national news right now because the police chief told the story in such great detail. So let's go to that press conference with Greg Bovino.
Correct.
Reporters tried to ask him about it.
They did. He was asked directly about the instance that the chief spoke about, and Bovino diverted completely, did not answer the question, instead flipped the script and said, well, when you have a police chief and a mayor who's telling people to call 911 anytime they see an ICE agent, don't be surprised if you're inundated with superfluous 911 calls. And when the reporter tried to say, well, can you answer the question? It was just, we will continue to do lawful operations, and dismissed any of the claims by the police chief.
And we have that whole press conference on our YouTube page for you to watch, see it for yourself. You can hear the reporters ask the question. You can see those diversions. And I want to make clear, this isn't just picking on Bovino to pick on Bovino. We are trying to get the answers that people are asking us to get. We ask the questions, and if they refuse to answer, there's not much more we can do.
Yeah, and the only other thing we can do, other than ask the questions, is ask for the records. And I just want to say, we've also done that multiple times. We have directly gone to DHS and said, please provide us with the names, the histories of all of these worst of the worst, including just anyone you've detained, so we know, what you're seeing here. And we want to be able to verify that information for the public so that the public can either understand these are people that are being detained for X reasons or not. And whatever that truth is, it's our job as journalists. But when we're not getting that information, we can only search our court records and we can only search our DOC records. Anything beyond that, we don't have access to crimes that may have occurred overseas. So by not providing that information to us from DHS, it becomes increasingly harder for us to do our jobs.
And I want to just talk a little bit about, you and I have done this for a long time. It is unusual, to say the least, to have this lack of cooperation for basic data. I mean, for years, this has not been the way things go.
It was surprising because you would think that this would be information DHS would be absolutely forthcoming. Why wouldn't they?
Right.
It would prove that they are the worst of the worst. They would absolutely assert their point.
Right.
And so by not getting that, it has just made our job a lot more difficult. I will say recently DOC came out with their own fact check, and so we've requested some information from them.
And just for folks watching, DOC is the Minnesota Department of Corrections, and this also came up yesterday because there were allegations made by the Assistant Acting Director of ICE that people were being released from jails or prisons. They weren't specific on which one, and they're two very different things. Prisons are run by the state, jails are run by the municipalities and the counties. And so they make an allegation saying that hundreds of people who are undocumented and criminals are just released without the cities, counties, or state telling them that they're releasing these people back into the public. They basically allege that we're just releasing violent, undocumented people onto the streets from jail.
Salesforce is an incredibly important and strategic investment for...
We're just releasing violent, undocumented people onto the streets from jail.
Right.
And the DOC has a response.
And that, yes. And so DOC's response is we are prisons, and that is not the case. Some of their direct quotes were that DHS has issued multiple public statements, and that they've then reviewed each name referenced by DHS, saying that the ongoing misstatements of DHS leadership reflect a fundamental misunderstanding in how the criminal justice system operates. It is imperative that they correct the public record. And then they went on to just say that DHS has not identified a single instance in which the Minnesota Department of Corrections released an individual from state prison custody in violation of an ICE detainer.
Not one.
Not one. They're saying every single time someone in DOC custody had an ICE detainer, they were released per policy to them. They weren't running rampant on the streets. If you had a detainer, then they were put into ICE custody.
Yeah, that is directly the opposite of what was alleged at this press conference. And again, for you, the people of Minnesota or people outside of Minnesota watching this, these stories have to match for us to be giving you the information that you deserve. You know, that DOC allegation was serious, and our Department of Corrections commissioner minutes after said, I will talk to you and show you our own records that we have already done. And it begs that question again, Kelly, that you and I have asked each other as colleagues. If we are, as a nation, ICE, Border Patrol, trying to get the worst of the worst, criminals who may do harm off the streets, there's not a lot of people that are going to say, no, I don't want that. But they're saying that, but then not cooperating and sometimes outright just giving misinformation over if that's the case, or alleging our law enforcement is not helping them. And yesterday in that law enforcement presser, those police chiefs were literally begging for help. Yeah, saying, please work with us. Help us understand. Because what's happening right now in Minnesota isn't sustainable.
If there's one thing that's clear is that disconnect would be a polite way to put it. We have not been able to draw the through line between what is up and what is down here. And like we talked about before, all we can do is ask for the records and ask the questions. But when we're not getting that, it makes our job increasingly difficult. But we will still try.
Right. We're all kind of learning in real time because those records are important. When you come out and you say you've arrested 10,000 people or 3,000 people since X amount a day, we don't see the receipts for that. They just tell us that. And yes, at that press conference yesterday, they brought up 3 examples, but we didn't have any record of that. They didn't provide us any information from that. And if they just provide 3, but yet say 3,000 or 10,000, where's the rest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another really interesting piece was that, and this was, I have to credit the Strib here because they just did some reporting that was very revealing, and it showed that in many instances, ICE did not detain the individuals that were being bolstered as the worst of the worst criminals were actually not people that were detained immediately by ICE in Operation Metro Surge. These were not people that were taken from the streets that were running amok. These were people who were picked up after being released from a jail or prison, DOC's custody.
So we had already held them accountable and then handed them to the federal government, which they allege we weren't doing.
Correct. In many instances of the mugs you see being held up by DHS for the worst of the worst, they were brought straight to the hands of ICE after serving jail or prison time. So it begs the question of the efficacy of this current operation that's going on, Operation Metro Surge, that's in the streets of our communities. I would love to see the receipts of the worst, specifically coming out of Operation Metro Surge. I would absolutely love that data.
But they have not provided us that data, and you've asked for it.
Yes.
The last thing, if we have time to cover it, if folks can remember, I know a lot going on right now, but perhaps jog my memory here. Is it a week ago the second ICE-involved shooting happens in Minneapolis, in North Minneapolis? And this is...
around a week ago.
Yeah. This is a man who they allege was in his car. They were trying to pull him over. A chase ensues. And then eventually a man gets shot in the leg by ICE. But new details came out about that story today.
Yeah, so old details were that 3 individuals, all with some sort of history that's been highlighted by DHS. One was the target of an ICE operation, crashed their car, then a struggle ensued outside of the car, and 2 individuals kind of piled on and had a shovel and had a broom and were, hitting agents over the head with these items. Today, different pieces of the story are coming to light, and it's being said that it wasn't hitting over the head with a shovel, it was tossing a broom in the direction of the scuffle. So I think that the bottom line is, when you have opinions in the court saying that certain actors are not fully trustworthy, and it's calling into question everything that they're doing. When you have a situation like that there seems to be 2 sides of the story, it's very hard to understand what is just the bottom line truth, what actually happened.
And what happens today is important in that story, because the versions that come out today hold a little bit more veracity because they were in court.
Correct. And they were in
the
court.
Things we heard before, not in court.
Not, I solemnly do swear, and you are possibly held for perjury if you're not accurate and truthful, knowingly accurate and truthful. And so, at different stakes, different things have come to light, and we can only hope we get to that truth eventually, because it is important. It's important for our community. It's important for us as journalists. We care.
Yeah, it's important for our country, too. All eyes on Minneapolis and our surrounding communities right now. Kelly Dietz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on The Plus.
Here we go. Check this out. This is a good one. A Somalian man was detained by ICE and survived.
The woman is telling her story, saying federal agents unjustly detained her last week despite being a citizen. Danny Spiewak is live at the Capitol with that story. Danny?
Munazra Ahmed stood with several DFL state lawmakers here in the Capitol press room today to talk about her experience and share her story about what she says happened last week. She claims that she was unjustly detained by federal agents after an encounter with them in St. Paul. 23-year-old Nazra Ahmed says she was born in the U.S. and spent much of her childhood in Minnesota.
My family says, "You're so American. You're so American. There's something American about you."
Ahmed claims, despite being a citizen, that ICE detained her last week in St. Paul. DFL State Representative Mohammed Noor posted this video to social media, which Ahmed says shows federal agents arresting her in an encounter she says began with agents following 2 other East African men.
They came out of their cars. They asked me to see my ID. And while they were asking me to see the ID, they just decided it was nice to be racist and say really nasty things to me.
Ahmed's family says she was detained for 2 days, which DFL lawmakers say is part of a trend.
This has to stop.
for the racial profiling that we've seen in our state of Minnesota.
DHS officials did not respond to requests for comment about this particular case, but federal authorities such as Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino have repeatedly denied that federal agents engage in racial profiling.
Our operations are lawful, they're targeted, and they're focused on individuals who pose a serious threat to this community.
Nasra Ahmed says she's sharing her story to document history.
I am proud. I am proud to say that I've survived ICE. I'm proud to say that I stood up for what is right.
Once again, just to repeat, we still do not have a response from the Department of Homeland Security about the encounter that occurred with Nasra Ahmed last week. Ahmed says that she's doing well and recovering, but claims that she suffered a concussion from being detained during the arrest. Back to you.
Well, we've already seen the video of these ICE agents deploy chemical agents, pepper spray and whatnot. But why not? Let's take it one more time from the top and see how real this crap is on peaceful First Amendment protesters. Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of petition. But these ICE don't give a fluke about that. Here we go.
green stuff is super carcinogenic. Guys. Guys, don't breathe the green stuff. It's so dangerous.
But actually, the person has freedom to spread. Stupid ideas up here. Now they're chasing people down. For what?
Holy.
For what?
What's going on back there? I don't know. Yeah, but don't go in there. Are you eating on it? You can go this side. It's not green. Put your stuff over your face.
Wow.
Stand back out there, just moving. My eye. Oh, my eye.
No way. No further.
There you go.
No
Guys, that stuff, the green stuff's dangerous. Don't breathe that. Are you okay? Sam, I have Bovino getting it over there. Let them cross. I have Bovino throwing gas. It's right here. Both our videos up again. I need to upload this one first.
After you.
You could leave!
Wow. You don't have to see how bad it's getting. It's getting so worse that ICE are detaining children. I kid you not. Watch this.
The district says 4 of their students have been detained by ICE agents over the past few weeks. That includes this 5-year-old boy, Liam Ramos, who school officials say was taken into custody with his father on his way home from school yesterday. Gordon Severson joins us now with more details. Gordon?
Yeah, this all happened as Liam and his father were driving home from preschool. According to Columbia Heights superintendent, she says ICE agents detained Liam and his father, and the family's lawyer says they are likely being held at a detention facility in Texas. School leaders are now speaking out because they say Liam is the 4th student in the district who has been detained by ICE over the last 2 weeks. Inside Valley View Elementary in Columbia Heights, there's a preschool classroom filled with 4 and 5-year-olds who may soon wonder what happened to one of their classmates, Liam Ramos.
He's a bright young student, and he's so kind.
Ella Sullivan is Liam's preschool teacher. She says her students haven't asked about Liam yet, but they will, and she and other teachers wonder how they can possibly answer their questions.
All I want is for him to be safe and back here.
The family's lawyer says Liam is likely being held with his father.
Man, I don't know what to think, dude. I mean, I am so full of rage right now and sadness that ICE goes to a school. A 5-year-old child going to school to learn. Like that teacher said, that poor kid's going to school and gets detained. Why? Because immigration status or undocumented? It doesn't matter. This is how bad ICE is going on, ladies and gentlemen. They are going around pepper spraying family vehicles with babies and children in there, detaining 5 and 8-year-olds out there, like this incident. It just makes me want to take your head and shove their wall. Yeah. This is disgusting.
At a detention facility in Texas.
We have clients that once they're picked up, they're whisked away to the airport literally within hours.
School officials say Liam is one of 4 students who have been detained by ICE agents over the last 2 weeks, including another student who was also detained on Tuesday.
On the way to school, a 17-year-old high school student, a minor, was taken by armed, masked agents. Alone. No parents were present.
Superintendent Zena Stenvik says the other 2 students include another 17-year-old and her mother, who were detained by ICE last week, and a 10-year-old girl who was also detained with her mother on their way to school 2 weeks ago.
And by the end of the school day, they were already in a detention center in Texas, and they are still there.
He's terrified.
Pastor Sergio Amezcua is also working with Liam's family. He says many in the Latino community are deeply concerned about children being taken
taken by federal agents.
Let Child Protection Services take care of them while the parents battle the legal battle.
Amezcua says many in the community are now afraid to leave their homes. His church has now received food delivery requests from more than 27,000 families who are scared to go to the grocery store.
ICE agents have been roaming our neighborhoods, circling our schools, following our buses, coming into our parking lots and taking our children, and our hearts are shattered.
When it comes to Liam and his family, their lawyer says they have been following the law as they are seeking asylum to become legal U.S. citizens. Their lawyer is now working to find a way to bring Liam back home to Columbia Heights so he can stay with his remaining family members and go back to school.
Gordon, do we have any idea why they were targeted or why the other students were targeted? Do we know anything about, was it legal status? Was it criminal history?
Well, the school district did say that one of the other students was detained 2 weeks ago and is still in Texas. But other than that, they don't have any other information about their legal status or what.
All right, here we go. Here comes the food delivery one I told you about a minute ago.
Say ICE is targeting their location, scaring away some people. So now volunteers are bringing those groceries directly to those who need it most. Here's Jennifer Hoff.
Inside a St. Paul food hub, people are working to move all of it out, including Ann Hill.
It's been, boots on the ground, full time.
The executive director of Twin Cities Food Justice normally rescues food, delivering it to local pantries, but now
totally different for me.
Is gathering it for families afraid of ICE.
We see them at a food shelf in a basement of an old church, and they're right by that church, looking for people who are coming just to get food.
Those pantries reporting 80% fewer visitors as donations here.
Crunchy peanut butter granola bars
are soaring and sorting it all into 1,000 bags in just the last week.
This is all about people wanting to do something.
Taking it to people in need. All across the metro in just 4 vans and a few volunteers.
I've done 3 trips today.
Sometimes even being tailed by ICE.
We've seen ICE out at my house. Which is crazy.
Training staff how to respond at places they never expected.
We're here.
Including schools, whose teachers are trusted to make this final delivery, bringing these donations right to different doorsteps.
Ann is now already delivering food to 25 schools, including Anwatin Middle School in Minneapolis.
Oh, gosh, this one's heavy.
As uncertainty mounts, half the students here are now not showing up.
You guys are doing the hard stuff.
Community, though, will.
Thank you.
Ask Ann. And that much is certain.
We'll continue to do that.
In Minneapolis, Jennifer Hoff.
As long as ICE is here.
KARE 11 News.
Ann says in normal times, 5% of Minnesotans are food insecure, meaning they don't know where their next meal is coming from. We posted ways that you can help it.
Tonight, there are 2 versions of what is happening in our state right now. One version says a noble and tough immigration administration is doing its job to keep you safe. The other says the enforcement tactics of immigration agents are wildly inhumane and are terrorizing Minnesotans and Minnesota. Lost in viral videos of confrontation and rhetoric with a political party first at all costs is humanity. I want to share some tonight. I got a note sent to me late last night from a man here in town who said, "I'm writing to tell you about my hurt." He's a retired blue-collar worker raising his grandson, and his grandson is Latino. His grandfather's hurt he wanted to share is really fear. He's afraid that when his grandson goes to school, he's not going to come back. When he goes out to play, that he could be taken. "I'm writing to tell you my hurt," he said at the beginning.
What do you think?
And then the last thing he said to me after he told me his story is, "Thank you. I needed to get that hurt off my chest." These are real people who are afraid to go outside.